हरि ओम। वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Our sadar pranams to our gurus. Team Param Vedanta welcomes you all. Friends, today is the satsang on the 11th session of Tripti Deepa. We will be covering verses 145 to 165. Swami Vidyaranya is covering the second line now of Brahadaryanka Upanishad, and he analyzes the wise man's desires. Does he have any? And if they are there, what kind of desires are they? But first, we will get a recap of last week's verses 127 to 143 from Rama ma'am. Over to you, Rama ma'am.
Shri Guru Nama. Recap of the verses from 127 to 143 that we studied in the last session. In the verse 127, we learned that Nididhyasanam and worldly transactions cannot go together. Swami Vidyaranya says that although Dvaita Vyavaharas cannot be avoided completely, try to reduce the avoidable Vyavaharas that talk about Jiva Ishvara Bheda or highlighting it. These Vyavaharas either distract from Brahmabhyasam or cause addiction to them. It may look even eating and bathing cause distraction, but basic unavoidable Vyavaharas like eating etc. should be performed to maintain the body. A short period of not focusing on the absolute does not cause any distraction for Brahmabhyasam. The kings like Janaka and Ajatashatru were involved very much in the Dvaita Vyavaharas, and through Nididhyasanam, they had realized the absolute. Abiding in it always conducted their duties just to exhaust the prarabdha karmas. It is because of the firm knowledge of the absolute they could perform both simultaneously. Janaka had made the knowledge like a forest fire, and thereafter the well-established Jagan Mithyatva did not disturb that fire. The rope will not get crushed under the weight of our perceived snake. Similarly, no events in Gnani's life is a burden. They continue to play the role as an emperor like Janaka and others, all doing their duties. Now the doubt is, does the Gnani have prarabdha karmas? Prarabdha karmas are same for both Gnani and Agnani. Their responses to them are different because of the insight of the knowledge of the self. Swami Vidyaranya illustrates this with an example. Two travelers, say a Gnani and an Agnani, having the same destination, say moksha, equally tired. One walks with enthusiastically ahead, knowing his destination is close by and enjoys his journey. The other, unaware of it, is tired by the burden of the journey. Vidhi nishedhas or Gnani's will or raga dvesha do not govern Gnani's life, but for his own prarabdha karmas. Hence, any karma or its effect will not affect the Gnani. So his actions will not transgress righteousness. The firm knowledge of Brahma Satyatva and Jagan Mithyatva strengthens the mind, decreases FIR and increases triple C's, that is calmness, cheerfulness and confidence. He has overcome the obstacles like Pramana, Prameya, Asambhavanas, the interpretational logical obstacles, and Viparita Bhavana, the emotional obstacles. With Shloka 134, The commentary ends on Aparoksha Gnana, the fifth stage, and Gnana Phala Rupa Shoka Nivruttihi, as mentioned in the second line of Brahadaryanka Mantra. He elaborates the second line and talks about the sixth stage, which is Shoka Nivrittihi. The import of the first line is that Gnani gains direct knowledge of the self and firmly abiding in it eliminates false notions of Kartrutva and Bhoktrutva. Triputi is Bhokta, Bhoga, and their link Bhogya. All triputis used for Vyavahara gets falsified. When Brahman is realized, the entire Dvaita Prapancha is negated. Once that is obtained, none remains to desire, says Swami Vidyaranya. Therefore, Triputi Nivrutti leads to Ichha Nivrutti, and he does not run after mithya worldly pleasures. What objects does the Gnani desire then? Swami Vidyaranya says that from the point of view of a Gnani, the Upanishadic words Kimichan implies Bhogya Nishedha, Kasya Kamaya implies Bhokta Nishedha, and by implication, all the Bhoga Ichhas are negated. When Bhokta, the desirer, Bhogya, the desired, are falsified, naturally Bhoga Pravrutti goes away. In the verse 136, Swami Vidyaranya mentions its results of Triputi Nishedha as Santapa Shamanam, meaning ceases sufferings like a burning lamp stops burning without oil. Now he wants to say that for a Gnani from Paramarthika Drushti, the whole universe is mithya like the rope snake. He knows that he is the Brahman, the absolute source of bliss, happiness, and fulfillment. Through Viveka, he has practiced dosha darshanam and he has developed vairagya towards them. He sees doshas like BAD, that is bandhakatvam, atruptikaratvam, and dukkha-karatvam in so-called pleasure-giving worldly objects. They only reflect the Atma Ananda. Swami Vidyaranya refers to examples from Yoga Vasishta and other scriptures to show that a Gnani will not have Ichha for a Nithya Vastu. The entire universe is, Swami Vidyaranya describes it as Apata Ramanaha, which is very attractive only superficially. Man desires wealth and sense pleasures as a source of peace, security, and happiness. In the verses 139 and 140, the downside of pleasures is reflected upon. Regarding inert objects like wealth, acquiring and maintaining them is stressful and is only a pain. Also, he talks about attachment to Chetana Vastu like pets or any other person. Gnani sees their body as a puppet made up of a mass of flesh, bones, etc. He views the beauty within the body as the manifestation of the divinity within. Scriptures point out these defects in sense objects. A Gnani, as a part of Nididhyasana, intensely assimilates the truth of Anatma. In the verse 142, Swami Vidyaranya gives a beautiful example to show that a Gnani is not trapped by any sense objects. A person, after sumptuous and royal meal, will not go for stale or poisonous food. He sees BAD, the threefold poison mixed with Vishayananda. Knowing this, why should a Gnani run after this poisonous food? Swami Vidyaranya says, a Gnani can also have non-binding karmas because of prarabdha janita karmas. A contract laborer does the job without developing attachment in the field. He is aware that he is not the owner, but only a temporary worker. Similarly, Gnani neither dwells in pleasures nor get attached to them, but acts according to his prarabdha karmas. Next question is, what will be the cause of desires of a Gnani? It will be answered in today's verses that we are going to study. Thank you. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you very much, madam, for an excellent and a very crisp summary of so many verses that we studied in the last class. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambu Janmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane Atmanam Ched Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purushaha Kimichan Kasya Kamaya Shariram Anusanjvaret. We have completed the study of the first line, Atmanam Ched Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purushaha. And having studied this, we know very clearly this is the Mahavakya, very similar to Ayam Atma Brahma. That means I should no longer take myself as a limited body-mind, but see yourself as the limitless Atma. I have highlighted in green that word called Chet, if. For us, this group, all of us listening, there is no question of ifs and buts. All of us at least will now pretend that I have internalized this wisdom. That is why they say in all pursuits, let us fake it before we make it. Let us either we have got it or we pretend that we have got the understanding that I'm no longer a limited being. I am this Atma Tattva. What does it mean, Atmanam Ched Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purusha? It is a repetition of these simple capsules that Swamiji wants us to remember, that I am of the nature of eternal and all-pervading, limitless consciousness. That means I am Atma. As Atma, I am the only permanent source of peace, security, and happiness. Everything else is not a permanent source and not a direct source. Everything else is dependent on me for peace, security, and happiness. This is a great understanding. It is because of me, the Atma, this body is alive. And through this body, I'm able to experience the whole world. Finally, we need to see this body-mind as only an instrument of interaction. And each one of us are that one common enlightened being functioning through different body-mind complexes. So although there are so many different body-mind, they're all Nitya. As I am of a higher order of reality, just like the dreamer and the dream world, anything that happens to the dream body, to my dream body in my dream, cannot affect me, the one who's sleeping and dreaming. So to anything that happens to this body or mind, and therefore everything that comes with the body, my family, my possessions, and so on, cannot really affect me because I'm of a higher order of reality. If I remember this all the time, my life is Nandati, Nandati, Nandati. If I forget this immediately, even after becoming a Jnani, I can become a Samsari. So, Swamiji says that between Jnana and Jnana Nishta, there is an intermediate zone. And in that zone, even though you've got spiritual knowledge, there is a possibility of falling back. That is why we need to attain to Jnana Nishta. Yat gatva na nivartante taddama paramam mama. So we are in that transition phase where we perhaps have seen, perhaps have reached, but we have not established ourselves into Jnana Nishta. Verse 134, worth studying, worth remembering this verse, which talks about two travelers having the same goal. Both of them are fully exhausted. Let us not think of two different persons. Let us think of two different aspects about me. One who remembers these 5 capsules all the time is the person who's called Jnanan, the one who knows his true nature, one who knows that I have already accomplished, one who knows my goal is reached. I just have to live my prarabdha. So for a Jnani, prarabdha is not of any significance, even though you are going through, just like an ignorant person, your body and mind is going through a lot of struggles, but you know it is like a drama. And therefore, even as it is difficult, there is a lot of zeal. The word used there is samayam aduratha. Literally, the goal is the same. But one knows I have attained. And therefore, how does he handle his prarabdha? Dhrutam and dhairatha, with lot of enthusiasm. He quickly goes. The other one, tishtati, and dina dihi, he just gives up. So that is why it is so important to be able to reach that, by remembering my real nature, I convert my life into a blessing. By forgetting, I fall down. But when I forget, I become the traveler who tishtati, who gives up. I'll bring you back to this BMI chart of Swamiji. Now, our goal or Jnana Nishta is represented by Omkara, the Pranava, the highest representation, Jnana Nishta. But between all that, there is that V. I'm going to speak to you about what is that V. That V is the Vasana. In all these verses that we will study today, you will see this. Sometimes I know that I am wrong, yet I am compelled to do it. Why? Is there some power that controls my free will? Is there a way that I can be the master of my fate? Now, if you see our life, whenever we do any action, there is a certain outcome. And the outcome, if it is a pleasant outcome, I want to repeat it. If it's a bad outcome, I want to avoid it. And when you repeat this action many times, initially we are clumsy, requiring a lot of effort, and then it becomes effortless. And when it becomes effortless, the mind has got a certain memory about that action. And this action now becomes what is called a vasana. Vasana is also called a samskara. Because of repetitive actions, it is like what is called an engram, a shortcut formed in my mind. And then it is stored in our mind, and therefore it can affect the subsequent, all our past actions. My today is a product of my past. That if I'm experiencing something happy or unhappy, it is part of my punya or papa that I have done in the past. And this is my prarabdha phala. Also, what I do today, what actions I do, whether out of my free will or what I'm driven to do, are all based upon what are called the vasanas. The vasanas drive me to do certain actions. Now, is there a way to control my vasanas? Our vasanas force us to act. Those acts, so that is why we need to be able to culture our activity and train ourselves to develop good actions called Shubha Vasanas and avoid bad actions which are called Ashubha Vasanas. Shastras repeatedly goad us to say that we should train ourselves into Shubha Vasanas and avoid the bad Vasanas. What is this Vasana Kshaya? Now, I know I'm being driven by my vasana. Whenever I feel the need for a relationship, remind yourself, asangoham, asangoham. By my true nature, I have no relationship with anything. When I feel my body is old and weak, remember, naham deham. This is called pratipaksha bhavana. Entertain the opposite thought. And when I feel limited, say, aham purnam asmi. Now, finally, if for true Jivan Mukti, it is Vasana Kshaya, and the secret is what is called alert living or Nidithyasana. And this is possible through development of Shubha Vasana. We will see, does a Jnani have Prarabdha Karma? Of course, yes. Is the Jnani affected by Vasanas? Yes. But now the Jnani has trained himself for more of the Shubha Vasanas and not so much affected by the Ashubha Vasanas. Jnani keeps himself busy, but he has really no objective to fulfill because he is already Purna and he knows about the three doshas of any Vishayananda, and he also knows that everything really is Mithya. Ultimately, how do we define moksha, or our goal is a stage when we are largely free of all binding vasanas and all actions should be free from any motives. With this background, let us look into the verses of today's class. The opening speaker will be Neeta. Neeta, please.
Hari Om. Sir, I've just kept the same slides, but it's in question answer format. So anybody can answer the questions. What these verses are saying is of the Kim Ichan, the second line of the Brahadaryanka Upanishad. And so next slide. Vidyaranya is telling that is trying to explain that does the jnani have desires? Because in the Upanishad, they're saying, he's asking a rhetorical question and he's saying, what desires can he have? So here Vidyaranya is refining that question and saying he does not have binding desires, but he has non-binding desires. And now next slide, sir. So why do we say that jnani does not have desires like in the Upanishad? Anybody can answer?
He sees the mithyatva of this Jagat. Jagan mithyatva, he is very sure.
Yes.
So, and also Triputi is not there. Bhokta is not there. Bhoktrutva is not there. Is it the answer?
Peaceful, yes, true. And then the third one is that BAD, which you said, which he already knew when he was doing sadhana chaturstaya sampanna, during karma yoga. And he knows that all these objects have problems of, binding you and giving you, not giving you full satisfaction and are mixed with dukkha.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Next slide, sir. So Vidyaranya agrees that, the jnani does not have desires, but then he says still what makes him, drives him to get out of bed. Something has to, if you're not going to have anything, you may just, want to be in the bed, but that's not how a jnani works, right? There are jnanis who go up and meditate, or there are jnanis who do a lot of work for the welfare of the society. And what is it that makes him get out of bed?
Prarabdha.
Yeah, his prarabdha. Jnani has prarabdha driven desires. What his vasanas, like sir just explained, because of his vasanas, his conditionings, he has some desires, but they're shubham, like sir said. Next slide, sir. So jnani does not have binding desires. They will not bind him. He will be prepared to lose them. If he can't complete it, he won't, fret and fume, and he won't make a fuss about it. And if he has to enjoy something, he has to enjoy music, he has to enjoy his family, he will go ahead and enjoy that. He won't be bound by those desires, and he can have thousands of them. So next, can you, yeah. So jnani will have, give the answer. They have non-binding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next. These desires will create samsara, as he will fulfill them with detachment. Yes, true or false?
False.
Yeah, it will not create samsara. Next, sir. Jnani can have thousands of these. Jnani can have thousands of binding desires. True or false?
False.
True.
Not have, because
binding. Okay, no. Yes.
So he
can
have thousands of non-binding desires. And negation of desires is negation of binding, unethical, insatiable desires. True or false?
True.
True. Next slide. So we come to the verse 145. Here the Vidyaranya is saying that, he will do all his desires. He will, accomplish all that he wants to do with viraktata. Viraktata means non-attachment. And he will not fret and fume like the, he will have his worldly afflictions. His worldly life is not an affliction, and he will be ready to lose the losable. Next slide, sir. Yeah, his attitude towards the day's activity is like koi baat nahi. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, no fret and fume. Next slide, sir. Okay, so the next verse which we are covering is 149. In this, he uses 3 keywords. Alpa bhoga. Alpa bhoga means that, he's satisfied with very little. if he gets like, he doesn't have very big demands. One song, one music, it's fine for him. If he gets more, that's fine. But he's satisfied very easily. And he runs about his life as a Leela, Krishna Leela, like that. And Manoso Nigraha, he's vigilant. He's able to handle his desires, and he is disciplined. So these are the three key words in this verse. In summary, Ajnani's desires are born out of his karma.
Attachment.
Yeah, his attachment, and also because he is ignorant. He doesn't know his real nature. So he feels that he's deficient, and that's why he is, he wants to, he tries to fulfill his desires to complete himself. Whereas a jnani knows that he is complete, and his desires are only a few left, which are because of his prarabdha driven desires, and they're non-binding, they're ethical, they're moral. And he does everything out of happiness, not for happiness, and very little can satisfy him. Hari Om. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Neeta, for giving us a very nice and a clear message of these two verses. The topic is open for discussion. Now, this is important. Anybody wants to clarify, Neeta will answer these questions about verses 145 and 149. What is the meaning of the word Klishyan? Because he explains it in this verse. Neeta, will you explain?
No attachment.
That's true. It's an attitude of more like Vairagya.
Klishyan usually means sad and sorrow, but over here, Swamiji specifically in this verse says, Klishyan is not that. It is a attitude of detachment, that he will have no affliction or no sorrow because of these desires.
Which means
no attachment to these desires.
See, when you have spiritual knowledge, and let us say we are jnanis, and then there are a lot of happy events in your life, you should not feel guilty about experiencing all of them. See, it is like, when nice things happen, let us experience, but no, all of them are just mithya, and therefore have no sense of an attachment. See, I'm not sure if this prayer will come later or it has already come. Let this continue all the time. Now, this kind of special prayer should not be in the mind. I'm so happy to have all these nice things. May this continue. This is the ordinary mind. What is the sannyasi mind? The sannyasi mind knows one thing, which is very painful, that anything losable, we should be prepared to lose. Because now you have discovered something unlosable. When you have discovered yourself, everything else, anatma, however nice it is, has a potential loss. And therefore, we should be mentally strong. That's why right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, in the 14th verse of the second chapter, Shri Krishna prepares Arjuna, and through Arjuna, all of us, Matra Sparsha Su Kaunteya, Sitoshna Sukha Dukkadaya, Agama Pahino Anityaha Tam Stitikshasva Bharata. Be mentally strong, because anything losable, we have to be prepared to lose. About the next verse, does anybody have any questions with any term like this? Manaso Nigrahitasya Leela Bhoga Alpa Api. Anything? These are opportunities for us to clarify. Instead of just listening, it is an opportunity for you to clarify. You can interrupt and talk. The satsang is meant for that alone. So be ready to ask questions when the speaker asks. We'll go to the next speaker, that is Shamala. Shamala, please.
Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Here, Swami Vidyaranya has given another beautiful example of the Jnani's attitude. The verse is like this. Baddha mukto mahipalaha grama matrena tushyati parairna baddho na krantaha narashtram bahumanyate. Next slide, please. Suppose there is a king, Mahipalaha, was attacked and captured by another king, and the whole kingdom has been lost, and he was kept in jail for several years. There was a rumor that he was going to be killed also. The king thought that I have lost everything, including my life also. Next slide, please. One day, the other king who has captured him called and said, I am going to release you. This king was extremely happy, and he has come from bondage to liberation. Baddha Muktaha. Even by this mere release and getting back the life, this person is already Purna Tripta. The other king, while releasing him, he says, I'll give you a village. What will this king say? Even without anything, he was happy because he was already liberated. Now, getting a village, he is overjoyed. Grama Matrena Tushyati. A liberated person is already happy because he is released by samsara, the sorrow of the slavery. Next slide, please. The other king who has never been captured nor defeated by anyone, such a person does not come under Baddha Mukta variety. He has a huge kingdom, yet he is not happy. He says, Rashtram api na bahumanyati. Even the whole nation is not satisfying enough. Swami Paramarthananda gives an example of Mullah Nasruddin. One day, a lady was carrying a handbag and walking. Mullah snatched her bag and ran off. Naturally, that lady started chasing. He went round, and after some time, he himself went and gave back the bag. The lady embraced the handbag and was so happy. I have this bag with me. Then Mullah asked, the very same bag 10 minutes before was with you, but at that time you are not expressing this. When you lost it and got back, it appears as though a great joy. Similarly, Mokshananda. It is ours only. Because of ignorance, we have disclaimed it, and when we get back, we are happy. This is Baddha Muktaha. Next slide, please. Sloka 151. Viveke jagrati sati dosha darshana lakshane kathamarabdha karmapi bhogechham janayishyati. Jnani also, previous slide. Jnani also may have certain desires caused by prarabdha karma, and that was explained from verse 143 up to 150. Now in the verse 151, it begins with Purva Paksha, an opposite point of view, which introduces a question. How can a Jnani have desire when he is alert and has deep understanding of the defects in pleasures? Next slide, please. Viveke Jagrati Sati. When Viveka, discriminative understanding. Jagrati Sati. One arises. Jnani gains the discriminative understanding called Viveka here. One aspect of Viveka is Dosha Darshanam. So the Jnani has Dosha Darshana Lakshane, means seeing the defects. The world has Dukkha Mishritatvam, Atriptikaratvam and Bandhakatvam. Seeing these three doshas together is called Viveka. Under this situation, Katham Bhoga Ichcham Jana Ishyati. How can Bhoga Ichcha arise in the Jnani's mind, the desire for sense pleasures? Such a situation appears illogical. And even if you say Prarabdha Karma is producing that, tell me how can Prarabdha Karma produce the desire when Ajnanam is absent and Dosha Darshanam is alive? For a Jnani, the world is not the source of happiness. Then how can Prarabdha Karma produce Bhoga Ichcha? Katham Arabdha Karma Api Bhoga Ichcham Jana Ishyati. For this, Vidyaranya Swami is going to answer in the next verse. Thank you. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha.
Thank you very much, Shamala. You'll have to stay back to answer some questions from any of our listeners in this satsang. So Shamala has explained two verses. One about the person who was released by the king. That means all of us who have been released from samsara and have been shown the path of moksha. And the other about how would a Jnani have any desires? Any questions on this for Shamala, please? Do you want to add something, Shamala? Nobody is saying anything. Let us look at the same Mullah Nasruddin example. See, when we have something, what does a guru do? What does a real guru do? A guru takes away from you what you think you have, but you don't. And he gives you something that you have always had, but you don't know you always had. Like this Mullah Nasruddin gives her the thing back to her. It was something that she always had, but he gives it back to her and takes away from you what you think you have, but you don't. See, what is that we think we have? We think this ego, I am this person. So the whole role of the guru is to take away our false self and reveal to you our true nature, which has always been there. And this is very nicely given in this example of that king who releases the other king who was captured. And this man is so happy. Can we be like that? Because of ignorance, we had lost our freedom. And through Guru Shastra Upadesha, this has been revealed to us. And let us be able to experience this. Now, Purva Pakshi has a very relevant question. Now, normally, karma followed by karma is because of avidya. So this is the triad, avidya, kama, karma. But now a viveki purusha, jagrite sati, that means an awakened person. And a person who knows all the doshas, how can such a person ever have a desire? Only if you have a desire, karma comes, then karma comes. Any questions? Maybe it will be answered in the next speaker. The next speaker will tell us about Vidyaranya's beautiful classification, and that will be by Kirti. Kirti, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Tripti Deepa verses 152 and 153. Verse 152. Na esha dosha yato aneka vidam prarabdam ikshate ichha nichha parecha prarabdam trividam smritam. First, in this verse, Swami Vidyaranya says, Purva Paksha's objection is not correct. The charge being made on Gnani is improper. Swami Paramarthananda explains that it is generally said that desires are caused by avidya. We have learned from scriptures that Gnani's desires are not caused by avidya because the fire of wisdom, Gnanagni, has destroyed its avarana and vikshepa. Thereby, the ownership of his balanced sanchita karmas is nullified. But to acknowledge the presence of desire in a Gnani, we need to understand that by merely being a human being, one possesses desires called Ichha, Gnana and Kriya Shakti, along with Prarabdha Karma Phala and free will. Because of these three Shaktis, Gnani has desired moksha. Therefore, there is no defect in accepting desire for a Gnani. It is caused by the fructifying prarabdha of this janma, which is a subset of sanchita karma. Prarabdha janita karma starts operating in every jiva from birth and has prarabdha phala and prarabdha vasana aspects, meaning the results of prarabdha karma and the tendencies and habits that have formed keep manifesting in this janma. They can be strong or weak, good or bad, right or wrong. Its vasanas influences the kartrutva in him, and the phala creates fulfillment of his desires. Gnani is a karta and bhokta in vyavaharika level, even though from paramartika drishti both of them are falsified. Swami Vidyaranya divides prarabdha karma into three types to explain how the force of prarabdha karma becomes functional in our lives. They are Ichcha, Parecha, and Anicca Prarabdha. Ichcha Prarabdha, the force of this Swa Ichcha Prarabdha is Prabala, and its vasanas or personal desires seek fulfillment by influencing the jiva's karta, compels him to act to attain the desired object and enjoy it thereafter. Example, coffee vasana. Parecha prarabdha are those results that come to us because of others' desires. Jiva's vasana or karta is not influenced, but prarabdha phala affects him. Example, effect of one's spouse's prarabdha. Anicca prarabdha, those results or enjoyments which come without conscious desire arising in the mind. Example, physical ailments, unhealthy conditions experienced by the gnani's body, old age, accidents come in this category. Every gnani experiences all these types of prarabdha, and conditioned by his swabhava sadhana with akarta and sakshi bhava, he will continue to exhaust his prarabdha with natural ethical desires. Verse 153. Apatya sevinas chora rajadhararata api jananta eva svanartham icchanti arabdha karmatah. In this verse, Swami Vidyaranya continues Ichcha Prarabdha and says, even though people know the dangerous consequences of certain actions to themselves, yet they do it. For example, a sick diabetic patient, knowing fully well the consequences of eating unhealthy food like sweets, perforce does so. The thief knows well the result of stealing, yet he steals. A man who has an illicit relationship with the queen of the land knows that he is playing with fire and can be beheaded if caught, yet he risks it. They desire and act because of the fructifying prabala prarabdha vasanas. Their karta gets influenced, which compels them to go after something they want. And through these activities, bhoktas experience anartham. They invite self-harm and punishment for themselves. Prarabdha karma phala, the results of past actions, can also create situations and compel us to do things we don't want to do. Life gets shaped by desires, but some desires are really wrong. Swami Paramarthananda says, human life is a tug of war between one's will and one's vasana. When they coincide, there is no problem. But very often, they are at loggerheads with each other. Then alone, to do or not to do question arises. At the end, will wins or prarabdha vasana wins is to be seen. Ravana was a Samavedi, yet he could not resist his vasana and he succumbed to his evil acts and ended miserably. He violated the rules of dharma. In the Kurukshetra war, Arjuna experiences the play of Ichcha, Anicca, and Parecha Prarabdha. But equipped with Kshatriya Vasana in his Svabhava and Gnana Shakti from Sri Krishna's teachings, his will to do his duty and fight the war wins. We do unpleasant things because of Prarabdha. Bhishma Pitamaha voluntarily renounced his right to the throne of Hastinapura and had no Ichcha, desires for power, post, or royal pleasures. Knowing fully well that the Kauravas were unrighteous, he had to serve as their minister and witness all their wickedness. Anicca plus Parecha Prarabdha. He went through all this with unshakable knowledge for the Lord. His will was very strong, a gnani and a watchman on duty. In gnani's Ichcha Prarabdha, that Ichcha has non-binding, moral, harmless desires which do not affect his gnana or moksha. fulfillment of Gnani's desire does not have the capacity to breed more to enslave him. Can we change prarabdha? The strong prarabdha have to be enjoyed or suffered. Milder prarabdha results can be modified. Weak prarabdha results can be neutralized. The conducive and unconducive situations that our prarabdha karma brings have to be gone through. None seem to escape it. Thank you, sir. Harihi Om.
Thank you, Kirti, for a very nice explanation of these two verses. The first verse, that is 152, this is Vidyaranya's brilliance of classifying prarabdha as Ichcha prarabdha, action that I do out of my free will, which I want to do. Aniccha prarabdha, even though I don't want it, I don't desire, these things happen. And parecha, that means those actions that I do for the sake of others. So this is a very nice classification, very well explained to us by Kirti. And the other verse will be about how the vasanas affect us. Now, this is very important. Any action that we do affects the future bhokta by the karma pala, and every action that we do today will affect the future karta by forcing them to do. And that is why it is important that we follow Shubha Vasanas and not any Ashubha Vasanas. Any questions on these 2 points?
Sir,
Go ahead.
Sir, this past last 2 verses from this, I understood that avidya kama karma leads to karta bhokta samsara. So for an ignorant person, we don't know the real self. So that avidya leads to desire karma, kama, and it leads to karma. Then he will enjoy the kartritva bhava, bhoktatva bhava, and samsara. Is it like that, sir?
Absolutely right. See, for an ignorant person, that means I do not know my true nature, that I am the only source of permanent peace, security, and happiness. I think I am this limited body-mind. My experience is all of limitations. Because I experience limitations, I feel if I have more money, if I have more power, then I will be happy. Now, that is karma. Karma will force you to do some things to acquire money, acquire power. And that is what is called karma. And this karma can be good karma or bad karma. Good karma will bring punya, bad karma will bring papa and unhappiness. And that perpetuates a cycle of punarjanma. So what we are learning here is that now that we have spiritual knowledge or jnanam, now literally that karma for what? Everything else that you get is only mithya. And therefore, how much are you going to invest on a mithya product, which is only going to create more problems? So therefore, let us have a sense of detachment for all these material objects. In the next set of verses, we will understand, Kim Ichan, is there a desirer in me? So these are very beautifully analyzed, and hopefully it will change our outlook to desires and hopefully bring out to non-binding desires. Vinayakan, is that okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Can I ask one question, sir? If you could please say it again, the Ichcha, Aniccha, and Paricha, the differences between these 3.
All right. Ichcha prarabdha. Now let us take it can be taken from a jnani's perspective or an ajnani's perspective. Swamiji has given an example of a jnani's perspective. Now a jnani who is a music lover, and suddenly one of his students comes who is a great musician. And he says, can you please sing 1 or 2 songs for me? And that person says, my lord, my voice is not there. I cannot, something wrong. I cannot sing. So the jnani is absolutely unaffected, but he had an Ichcha. The Ichcha was to listen to him, but then When the student says, I cannot sing for whatever reason, he is not affected at all because it is not a binding desire. So whenever there is a desire prarabdha, that is called Ichcha prarabdha. Now, Swamiji gives another example of what is called parecha. Parecha is, this jnani is not a great lover of music, but one of his students is a musician who's going for a concert. And before he goes to the concert, he says, my Lord, I want your blessings. And before that, can I sing 1 or 2 songs for you? Now, the jnani was very busy with so many things, but for the sake of his student, he says, okay, sing. Now, it is not his Ichcha, it is parecha. For the sake of some other person, he allowed it to happen. Now, the jnani is listening to him and then he has a good laugh. And when he's having a laugh, he suddenly develops a catch and a back pain. Now, he did not desire to have that back pain, but that catch happened because of the laughter. That is anicca. So some things like our prarabdha karma and the bad karmas happen. Anicca, I don't desire for illness or sorrow, but they happen. So anicca is what you don't desire for. Ichcha is you desire for certain things. And then parecha is when you desire for others. Sri Narayan?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was a good example too. Thank you.
We'll proceed. Yes,
Sir,
please.
can I ask you something, sir?
Please, madam.
That karma phala and karma vasana, can you please?
All right. See, all our life today, if I'm experiencing, we are having this opportunity to have satsang, to get spiritual knowledge. Great gurus have come and given this learning to us. Now, why did this happen? Certainly, we must have done something in the past that we have deserved great gurus. So if you're having a good experience now or something happening, now my present is affected by the present punya, the punya of my past life is giving me happiness in this life. So the bhokta in me, the experiencer in me, is affected by my past punya, or the bhokta, the experiencer in me, can be affected by my past papa. I might have done something wrong and therefore I need to have some severe back pain or headache or some suffering that I have to go. So this is my present bhokta is affected by the karma phala of the past. Clear? That is the bhokta, the experiencer. In all of us, in our brains, we have the motor nervous system and the sensory nervous system. The sensory is all my experiences. In Sanskrit, it is called bhokta. The motor nervous system wants me to do. That is the karta in me in Sanskrit. Now, why some sannyasis or jnanis are very active, traveling from one place to another, all the time busy, or there are some people who shy away from the public, who don't want any honors, who want to be by the side, not to be known by any people. Now, this is all the past vasanas. Now, whenever you do any action this will create a certain tendency. That means my mind remembers the past, and because of my past actions, I want to do certain things because I experience a joy and I want to repeat it. So whenever there is a memory of a good action in the past, I want to keep repeating that. Now, a person has tasted coffee. He enjoys coffee. Now, the karta in him at that coffee time is forced to find where he can get some coffee. This becomes more in this case of alcohol or drugs. Now, when an alcoholic is traveling, he is so sure that he needs to get his alcohol at right time. So he either will carry alcohol with him or he's on the lookout to see where alcohol will be available, because there is the karta in him which is affected by the past vasanas. So there are two aspects. The sensory aspect is the bhokta. The bhokta is affected by the past karma phala, sukha or dukkha. There is a karta in me. The karta is affected by the past vasanas. Clear?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Kulkarni,
Sir, I have one more question, sir.
sure.
There was one word about prabala prarabdha. If you could just give a small example of that one, that will help.
All right. See, whenever you say prarabdha, it can be prabala or durbala. Durbala means weak, prabala means very strong. Now we see that in medical practice. Now supposing a person has come to me with a medical problem. He's come to me with a brain tumor. And when I see the brain tumor, I do not know if his prarabdha is prabala or durbala. All I will say is we will do an operation and we will see the biopsy report, and based on the biopsy report, we will know. Now the biopsy report has come as a benign tumor. So his prarabdha is now durbala. It is not so strong because now I have a treatment modality and that has helped him to recover, and therefore he goes on with his normal life. On the other side, a person has got prabala prarabdha. The biopsy report has come as a grade 4 cancer. It has spread to many places. Now, whatever you do, the person is going to succumb to the disease, and the best treatment is not possible for it. So when the prarabdha is very strong, I do not have any prayaschitta or any counter antidote for them. But when the prarabdha is not so strong or durbala, that is why give me the courage to change the things I can, accept that which I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. That is why whenever we have a certain karma, I do not know whether it is prabala or durbala. So what do? I will use whatever resources I have in the world to be able to ameliorate my headache, stomach pain, whatever. But then once I know it is something, it is prabala, it is very strong, then I accept, I surrender to the prarabdha. Shall we proceed?
What is the difference between binding desires and non-binding desires?
Now, binding desire means without that person, without that object, without that situation, my mind says, I cannot be happy. I will be miserable. You know, I have made that rule in my mind. See, it is only my mind that has said, without him or her, without that object, without that situation, without that university degree, without that happening. So my desires are such that I want it, and without that, I tell everybody and myself, I cannot be happy. That is a binding desire. On the other hand, another person says, if I get it, good. If I not, all right, we'll try for something else. That is a non-binding desire.
So the vasanas are from past life or the present or previous, like
it can be it can be like our karma, karma phala. It can be in my present life. I have trained myself for a certain exposure or whatever. Sometimes it can be coming from the past also. So this we do not know. So we know ourselves how much of our present has been affected by my past conditioning. And sometimes the past conditioning can be past lives also.
So due to past vasanas, we also do present Ashubha and Shubha vasanas. We go through that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Proceed. Kulkarni, sir. Kulkarni?
Oh, sorry, sir. Kulkarni sir is not coming today.
He is not coming. Okay, let us see what Kulkarni's 2 verses are all about. All right, one verse is that verse of the Bhagavad Gita. It comes in the 18th chapter, verse 60, where Krishna is warning Arjuna that, you know, you do not act out of delusion. See, you are Rajasic by nature. You are Kshatriya by nature. It is not your nature to be a sannyasi. And therefore, even if you choose to run away from the battlefield and you want to be a sannyasi, the Rajasic force in you will force you to act. And therefore, instead of being forced to act, I would rather recommend that you listen to me and do your duty as you're supposed to be. That is the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, verse 60, which we have already said. And then the next verse is about Paricha Prarabdha. That is also called Paradakshina Samyukta. That means I gave you the example of that Jnani who was not interested in music, but he had a student who loved, who was going for a certain concert and he wanted his blessings. So he says, sometimes a jnani may have to go through a pleasurable or a painful experiences for the sake of other people. So when you do some things, you allow this to happen. So every action is through your choice only. You allow it to happen so that you want to help somebody, you want others to be happy. This is called Paricha Prarabdha. That was verse 162. Any questions on these two verses? There are no questions. We'll go to the last speaker, Dr. Chandrakala, please.
Good evening, sir. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Let us go to verse 163. Katam tarhi kimicchanati evam ichcha nishityate necha nisheda kintvecha bhado bharjita bijavat. Here, Vidyaranya Swami raises a question in Purva Paksha in the first line and answers in the second line through analysis. First line, does this desire not contradict the verse that says he is desireless? Vidyaranya Swami is established in previous verse that jnanis do have desires caused by prarabdha vasanas. This contradicts the statement in Brahadaryanka Upanishad which negates desires in jnanis. Even in 7.1 verse also, Kimichan kasya kamaya shariram anusanjvare. Here, desiring object is gone and desiring subject is negated. After Jnani, after attaining Jnana, there is no desire. In the second line, he answers, Na Ichcha Nishedaha. It doesn't negate Ichcha, Kinto Ichcha Badaha, but Ichcha Badaha. So here, there are two types of negation has been discussed here. Nishedaha means something totally removed. If I say it is a rope, not a snake, snake is completely removed. Ichcha Badaha means when I hold a pot and say it is not a pot, but only a clay. Pot remain in my perception, but clay is real, but the clay is real where pot is negated. So it is same with bangle and gold. And it's also same with the wood and furniture. So here, discover nityatva. Desire is negated by baditaha. So how is desire in enlightened person? How it is in unenlightened person? In unenlightened person, if I desire something, it goes to the extent that I want it, I need it. In the absence of fulfilling that, he suffers. But as against an enlightened person, and whether he gets it or not, it doesn't bother. So as his nature is Sachidananda Atma, that means he knows he is whole and complete. Experience of this enlightened person is that thought remains unchanged. He doesn't take it seriously. It is Ichcha Badaha. So he has given an example of roasted seed. Jnani's desire is like a roasted seed because physically it is persistent, but it has no capacity to germinate. Desire is roasted in a jnana fire. So it is not that jnanis do not experience emotions. It gives bhoga or it gives pleasure at that time of entering the mind, but it does not get overwhelmed or stressed. It doesn't get stuck. In unenlightened person, what happens? When he desires something, he doesn't get it, he gets krodha. So it gets into deeper, then he gets vyasana. So when something he gets it, and when something which he loves, he gets it, he develops addiction. He develops attachment. If it is, and he doesn't worry him alone, and also is bothered about his family, he gets entangled. So there is a nice example Swamiji gives. It is jackfruit. Jackfruit has something which is very sticky. When he doesn't know how to handle that, it gets stuck everywhere, right hand, left hand, everywhere. But he uses oil and enters the jackfruit. That is, here the oil is like dana, in the dani. So then it doesn't get stuck. So this is a nice example Swamiji has given. So if in verse 164, so desires does not cause dependence in jnanis. Why? On account of his realization, he knows there is an illusory nature of the world. Coming to the verse 165. So here it explains that why desires are like burned seed or roasted seed in enlightened person, and it is unroasted in unenlightened person. Dagda bijam arohipi Bhakshanayopayujyate Vitvat Icha Api Alpa Bhogam Kuryan A Na Vyasanam Boho. In enlightened person, desire is like Datta Bijam. It's burned seed. So which is Arohi Api. So it is useless for planting because and useful for eating because it doesn't germinate. An unenlightened person, to fulfill some desires, he commits some action. So which creates Adrishtapala. And that fructifies later to seed. That results in Punarjanma. Vidvam Icha Alpabhogam. But in enlightened person, desires create a small enjoyment, small experience, but there is no possibility of later fructification. Desires present only at the time of entering the mind, but it does not suffer because ego is burnt in the Gnani. No karta, no bhokta in Gnani. And it is incapable of doing any action because enlightened person acts in the absence of free will. So he does not produce any new karma, but he exhausts the results of the old karma. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, Dr. Chandrakala, for nicely explaining these two verses. Any questions about these two verses? First there was a Purva Pakshi's question about Jnani having desires. And then there was a nice example of that roasted seed, which is not binding, about the Dagda Bija. About these two verses, any questions, please? Dr. Chandrakala will answer your questions. Very nice example of a roasted seed. A roasted seed has the ability to give you taste. It can be consumed, but it is not going to germinate. What is it does not germinate? That means if you do actions in such a way, when there is no sense of doership, it is not going to produce either punya or papa. That is how a jnani continues to be very active. And that is why they say there is no agami karma for a jnani. Because once you don't identify with that limited me, you do what the whole does. That means what you're supposed to do, but there is no sense of a personal motive. When there is no motive involved in an action, then there is no punya or there is no papa, and such an action is not going to germinate punarjanma. So that is what we need to be able to see, that our actions should not be able to germinate into any punya or papa. Now, sometimes we wonder, why not create more punya? Even if you have more punya, you still have to come back into this world to experience that punya. And therefore, the objective is to get rid of both punya and papa. Let our objective not be to acquire punya nor papa. On the other hand, we lead an active life, but have no sense of a motive, no sense of a personal motive in all your actions. Any doubt about this?
Sir.
You know, on that same line, actually it's relating to the previous two verses before. This Shubham Vasana, Jnani, why will he bother about Vasana, creating more Vasanas? I mean, for him, you know, this is just like you said, you know, making new karmas. We are not interested in making any karmas, or karma is now falsified. So even making Shubham Vasanas, I mean, hopefully we have Shubham Vasanas because we've come so far along. This only because of the Shubham Vasanas we've come along so far. So creating new Vasanas, you know.
It is for an Ajnani.
Yeah.
An Ajnani needs to train to create Shubha Vasanas rather than Ashubha Vasanas. Because, you know, there is a very nice definition of the word Hindu. Hindu means Hinam Nashayate iti Hindu. Hinam means to destroy that which keeps you low. What keeps you low? The Ashubha Vasanas keep you low. That is why whenever you see Nataraja dancing, or even Dakshinamurti, that, under that there is the apasmara of forgetfulness. And that forgetfulness is like the representation of that which can pull you down and make you forget your true nature. And therefore indulge in, kama, krodha, lobha, all that will come, because it is all a product of avidya. So Nataraja is the one who is able to win over all this and keep it under yourself. So therefore, it is only an Ajnani who has to create Shubha Vasanas. But once a person has a Jnani, then these things are all come into the domain of Mithya. For a Jnani, everything is a time pass.
Sir,
Good.
sir, can I ask you something?
Sure.
Sir, in the example of roasted seed, sometimes if a seed is not completely roasted, it may germinate. Similarly, if a desire is not roasted, anything like that, where further punya or papa may be possible.
See, all of us are in that half-roasted zone. It is a good point. See, normally they say Jnanam is all or none. Either you have got it or you have not got it. Because, see, once you discover the rope as rope, the snake immediately disappears. And there is no question of, I'm still frightened of, what happens if the snake reappears. That is not going to happen. But then on the spiritual path, there is a twilight zone where there is a tendency to fall back into ignorance. That is why we are in the vulnerable state where there is spiritual knowledge is there, but it has not become a nishta yet. And that is why satsanga is so important. It is through satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischala tatve jivan muktihi. And therefore, true freedom is possible when, tat chintanam, tat kathanam, anyon tat prabodhanam. Let us help each other to move from Dhyanam to Dhyana Nishta.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Can I say something? I mean, ask.
Please.
So this Viparita Bhavana, I think that is our main problem. Isn't it?
Absolutely. Can you clarify what is this Viparita Bhavana?
That is the habitual thinking because of our past janmas. Again, it is a vasana which has been going on for centuries.
That is true.
So it is so ingrained in us that we have to pluck it out.
That's true. No, I always would share one example. I was a resident at Nimhans for a long time. And at the same place, suddenly one day I became a resident to a consultant. And at that time, there was an issue of the residents going on strike. And when the issue was being discussed, I stood and supported the residents. Then I was called aside by the head of the department and said, see, from now on, you have to see yourself as a consultant. You should not identify with your resident, because if being a consultant are bad for the resident, it weakens all the consultant's position. See, when you have moved from a particular level to a higher level, from a resident to a consultant, from a laborer to the management, then what happens? Even though you have been a laborer for a long time, now when you come to the management level, your mentality is still that of a laborer, and you still have labor union tendencies. And then when you come to the management, there's, your whole outlook has to be different. When you become a jnani, the ajnani tendencies, or what Dr. Rekha is talking about, the Viparita Bhavana, which has been there not only in this life, but in so many lives, keep pulling you down. That is why the same thing, Satsangatve, Nisangatvam. And so there is a, twilight zone which we need to work on. So it is not a fully gray-white zone.
Thank you.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
The seeds of desire are roasted in the fire of Gyan. It's okay. But sometimes I feel like desires, if one has never lived those desires, his desire to live those desires would be stronger. Isn't it better that once we live the desires, then we get roasted, then we are out of it?
You know, that is that looks very reasonably right. But then desire breeds more desire. It is like putting petrol on the flame. It can never be satiated. In our own life, we will know that, you know, if I have tasted it once, maybe I'm done with it. Not so. You know, ye dil mange more, you want more. And then that moreism, if you read Swami Tejomayananda's book in the beginning of this Tripti Deepa, and he says, by having more and more and more, Tripti will never happens. When you're eating food, maybe Tripti will temporarily happen, but it does not happen for money or any other forms of desires. So although what you said is, you know, in my mind, if I feel I have never tasted that, and if I have that, maybe I will be fulfilled. You can go through your own experience, you know, having tasted it. If the experience is pleasant, your mind wants it. If the experience is unpleasant, clearly no, I don't want it. You know, I've burnt my finger, I don't want it. On the other hand, if I have a certain perspective that I am the real source of joy and all these are fake things, and they have BAD, bandhakatvam, triptikaratvam, drij. You know, what you're saying is very true. We have to burn our hands before we get over it. So not so easy. So we cannot play with fire like with desire.
So they say that the fear of unknown is more than the fear of known. So the desires we have never tasted, it is like unknown. So I think it has more attraction. And secondly, all this language, all this knowledge, I, for example, am getting at this 6th decade of life. Who gets it at 2nd decade, 3rd decade? But they are the lucky ones.
That's true. No, that's true. No, and I'll tell you, even at this decade of your life, you can be as vulnerable as at any other decade of life. And that is why this is a message for all of us. At least better late than never. Let us analyze these desires. And all our teachers have spoken. See, most of our desires there's no rationale why you like something. I just like it. And therefore, we need to see, are these Shubha or are they Ashubha? Are they going to help me to grow or are they going to bind me? Is it Vishayananda or Atmananda? That is why Swamiji has given those 5 things, no? Those Viveka, Pratipaksha, Bhavana, Prarthana, Satsanga, you know. I hope all these will somehow awaken us to become a master of your desire. I'm not sure if this word is right. You know, the word Kamaraj. You know, are you the master of karma? That means I am no more a slave of karma.
So we just one more last sentence. We can be Kamaraj on our own account, but sometimes Paricha also out of like habit or what we have been doing earlier. For Paricha, we have to sometimes succumb to the same Icha of somebody close to you.
Are you talking about, you know, for younger people, it's like peer pressure.
And for elder people, for example, marriage partners also, like one person may have learned these things through these lectures and is getting enlightened. But then, I mean,
Right. I know. So they are a complex factor, but let us see slowly and slowly. Later on, it will come. Shanai, Shanai. See, if you read this whole Tripti Deepa, these words will come. Shanai, Shanai. Can somebody tell me where this word Shanai, Shanai comes?
Shanai, Shanai, Ruparamate.
Which chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Correct. In the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Shanai, Shanai. The word Shanai, Shanai will come in Tripti Deepa also. So let this intention be that I'm going to be If I've understood right, Kama Raja, to become the master of my desires. Now desires will be there, but then I can pick and choose if I want it and so on. So, but let it be like baby steps. Shanai, Shanai.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Shall we conclude today's class? Neeta, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you to Vidyaranya Swami. Thank you to
Thank you,
Dr.
sir.
Hegde and the team. We must start with alert living, like Sir said in the beginning. Constantly contemplate Brahman, Satyam, Jagat, Mithya. Next week, we go into more details of these desires. This session will be premiered tomorrow at 6:45 on YouTube. The details will be sent to you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.